Good afternoon. I'm Mimi Willard, president of the Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers, and welcome to the latest in our series of impartially moderated voter education webinars. This is part of COST's community service mission. Today's event, the focus is on the Marin Municipal Water District's 3 director seats that are going to be on the ballot in Marin in November. As you are likely aware, this may be the most important local election that's been held in Marin in many years. We're very pleased to have today as our moderators, Dick Spotswood, who is the Marin Independent Journal's political columnist, and also he is going to be assisted by Scott Pinsky, who is the president of the Marin Coalition, who is going to be helping Dick with managing our question queue, which he does very ably for the Marin Coalition. Dick will introduce the candidates and explain the game plan for you. So with that, let me turn it over to Dick and Scott.
Amy, thank you. Well, welcome to the COST, Coalition for Sensible Taxpayers, forum for candidates running for the Marin Municipal Water District Board of Directors. MMWD serves about 191,000 Marinites living in central and southern Marin County. Today, we focus on the 3 divisions in which have candidates up for re-election or election in this balloting, which, by the way, ballots go out tomorrow and will be counted and concluded on November 8th. They're the 1st, 3rd, and 4th divisions. That's MMWD talk for a district. There are 5 districts altogether, and 3 districts are up in this election. It's a first past the post system, meaning whoever achieves the plurality of votes in November is elected to a 4-year term. The 1st division includes North San Rafael and Sleepy Hollow. The 2 candidates are the incumbent Jack Gibson and Matthew Sampson. This session will go first and will end at 4:30 p.m. The 3rd division consists of the Ross Valley, San Geronimo Valley, and Green Bay areas. There are 3 candidates vying for the post: the incumbent Larry Bragman, Jack Kenny, and Rajiv Kush. The session starts at 4:30 and ends at 5:15 p.m. Basically, we're giving 15 minutes for each candidate. The 4th district comprises Mill Valley, Tamalpais Valley, Marin City, and Sausalito. There is no incumbent running. The 2 candidates that are running, Shauna Kotzman and Jed Smith. Of the 2, Jed will be with us. Shauna has declined to participate. So we'll only be devoting 15 minutes to the 4th division, which will start at 5:15 and end no later than 5:30. Ground rules. Starting in alphabetical order in each division, each candidate will have a 1 1/2 minute opening statement to outline their qualifications and experience. It'll be followed by a Q&A session. 1 minute for time to answer for each question with a hard stop at 1 minute. The questions are proposed by me and Scott Pinsky. Scott, where are you? Scott is here, and he's been working on the questions with me. How are we going to do the questions, and where do they come from?
Well, Dick, the questions are a combination. We have some questions from the board of COST. We have questions from the community that have been submitted in advance. And some of the questions we have refined and developed on our own. What we're trying to do is get a balanced set of questions to deal with the totality of the issues that all divisions are facing here in the entire board's jurisdiction. So we're going to try and cover as much as we can. Obviously, given the time limitations, we're going to be limited on the number of questions. So if you've submitted a question and you don't hear it today, we apologize in advance. We could not get them all in, but we're trying to assemble all of the topics that folks have raised into a set of discrete questions that we'll pose to each of the candidates.
Scott, by the way, is chair of the Marin Coalition, which is a nonpartisan, highly regarded group in Marin County that talks about civic issues usually once a month. Let's get going. By the way, at the end of the questions, each candidate will be given 1.5 minutes to explain why you, the viewers, should vote for them if you live in their division. Questions will all alternate between the candidates, so everybody gets first shot, or turn at first shot. Let's start. Division 1, Jack Gibson, and Matt Sampson. Welcome, by the way, to the Cost Water Forum. Jack, we do it alphabetical, not just because you're the incumbent, but you get to go first as making your first minute-and-a-half statement, followed by Matt. And after that's finished, we'll go into Q&A. Jack Gibson, welcome.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And thanks for the opportunity to be here and make this presentation today. As Dick said, I am Jack Gibson. I'm the current representative for the North San Rafael Sleepy Hollow Division 1 for the Marin Municipal Water District, and I am running for re-election. I am running for re-election because I have long been an advocate for more water to our district and for Marin Water. But the public will has not always been there. The availability of that water has not always been there, but the moment is right now. We're still in the driest 3-year period of 125 years. So people are very familiar with what water shortage can mean. And I think the moment is now for increasing our water supply. That's not to say we have not been doing things along the way. We have done actually a number of things since the previous drought of record, 1976-77. We've created a new reservoir in Sulahuli in 1980. We've doubled the size of Kent Lake. We have created the first in Northern California regional recycled water effort, and we have had multiple increasing contracts with Sonoma Water for more water. So even though we've done all of these things, and most recently, I almost forgot this, in January of this year, we increased the amount of water we take from the Russian River by 5,000 acre feet. That's the equivalent of building a new Bontempi reservoir this year. So we've been doing things along the way, but in my opinion, and I think many would agree, not enough. And particularly with climate change and the need for more water. So my mission and the reason I'm running for re-election is to take advantage of that opportunity. The time is right, and I bring to the table the experience, the relationships with the northern regions of the West Bay, and I want to take that opportunity to exercise that and increase our water supply, particularly coming from the north.
Thanks, Jack.
Yep.
Sampson.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you very much to COST for hosting this event, and to Dick and Scott, for helping to moderate it. My name is Matt Sampson. I'm the Division 1 Director Candidate for the Marin Municipal Water District. I'm a longtime resident of Division 1. I'm also the proud husband of a scientist, and my wife and I are raising 2 daughters in this division, looking to invest here not only for our future, but for theirs as well. I'm a career firefighter. I've spent almost 2.5 decades in the fire service, starting in Division 1 and then transferring down to South San Francisco in 2005, where I've served as their deputy fire chief for the past 5 years. And our focus over the past 5 years has really been on the prevention of and response to wildfires in the changing climate that they're affecting them to do that. But I'm running for the water board position because I don't think the current board has acted with enough urgency. It was just around a year ago that the authorization for a $100 million pipeline was made across the Richmond Bridge, a crisis decision that wasn't fair to the ratepayers, and it wasn't going to be fair to the environment as well. And of note, I think when we start looking at that, the number of acre feet that pipeline was going to bring to bail us out was the same number that was identified in the 1991 Civil Grand Jury report done on the Water District. Almost 3 decades later, still not enough has been done. I'm here to bring a new perspective and bring change and get our supply up. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We are now going, and Matt and Jack, Matt, you could turn your screen on. We're going to be asking you a few questions. We'll have you both. Let's start off with Matt, since Jack started off on the comments. How do you, Matt, differ from the other candidate in your division in terms of experience, approach, and policy objectives? Matt Sampson, 1.5 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Dick. So I've been in the fire service now for 2.5 decades, like I mentioned. And the reason I bring that up is because my job, my focus, what we do all day long is identify where we want to be in terms of safety for our community, both now, both tomorrow, and both a decade from now, and do everything we can to prepare for that and make the appropriate decisions or take the appropriate steps to make sure that we're able to meet the need, especially of emergency response for the community. Where I see my strengths is actually setting policy and setting a goal where we want to be specifically for a water supply, where we want to be in terms of how much water we need for the county, and then making moves and getting there to make it done. Where I work now, failure is not an option. It's not okay for me to walk away from work and understanding that a town could burn down. Same thing is for water supply. There's really no excuse for running out of it. And when we hear Marin's been pretty good, except for a few notable exceptions, say that to a town that's burned down, or say that to areas that actually run out of water. It's not what the public wants to hear. It's not what they deserve. I think we can do better, and that's the mindset and the perspective I bring to the board. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Jack Gibson.
Okay, thank you. Well, what I'm bringing to the table in this election specifically is many years of regional experience. Clearly, our future is working with other water districts and enhancing the benefit for the entire North Bay. That's the most economical way to do it. It's the way we can tap the most water and the most efficiently. And I have the relationships to accomplish that. I have been a longtime chair of the North Bay Watershed Association and a co-founder, working with not only other water agencies, but sanitary districts, flood control, across the spectrum of water users and water suppliers in the region. I am the vice chair of the North Bay Water Reuse Association, which is a regional organization focused on bringing water reuse, recycled water to not just one agency, but to regions. And I think it's those kinds of experiences and those kinds of relationships that's necessary to accomplish it at this particular moment.
Thank you, Jack. Scott, I believe you have a question.
Yes, and this comes from several of our viewers. We'll start with you, Jack. If you are reelected, will you commit to bring to a vote of the board at least one new or additional water source concept or project within 6 months of the election? And if so, what is your proposal likely to be?
Okay. Well, the I will propose and advocate bringing a proposal to the voters to allow us to go forward with the desal project. I don't necessarily mean that we will go forward with it, but we need to get permission from the voters to be able to do that because of a previous citizen-driven anti-desal measure. So I would get that obstacle out of the way quickly. My best hope, however, as I've suggested here, is reaching out to the north. The Russian River winter water, the difference between the winter water and the summer water is astronomical. The winter flow in the Russian River is 1,600,000 gallons of water. That's from October to May. That water goes essentially untapped year after year, flowing to the ocean. Jointly together, we can create the storage to capture some of that winter water. The volume of that winter water, just to give you a comparison, one season of 1,600,000 is the equivalent to 20-year supply for all of our 7 reservoir system. So the Russian River water is enormous, and it's sitting there untapped, and jointly, I think we can access that for the benefit of the whole North Bay.
Jack Gibson, thank you. Matt Sampson.
So yes, I would bring it into I'd like to see a vote within the first 6 months for an alternative water supply or a new water supply, because I think we need an emergency plan right now, because I don't want to find us in the same position we were in last year, rolling the dice and hoping that we had a once in a decade or excuse me, a century storm. I do think the Russian River water is the next best thing to do, and I do agree with starting to bank it and do that, but that's going to take a few years to get that process right off the ground. I don't see why we cannot actually invest and buy additional winter water and start tapping off the reservoirs as we get closer towards the wintertime. Even if we might actually spill a little, we'll still have an insurance policy to help us move forward with that. But once that's in place, that's a temporary fix, a Band-Aid to get us to where we really need to be. And that's the ability to store and bank water, not through additional reservoirs above ground. I think that's going to be much more difficult. I think we find success below ground and partnering with the aquifers that already need the water right now. And then lastly, I do think we should handcuff ourselves from the desal piece and start looking at a stopgap or the ability to actually create our own water as part of the resiliency plan.
Scott and Jack, you both mentioned Matt and Jack, you both mentioned the word that's been talked about by many people in the county, desalinization. Can you give us your thoughts? And we'll start this time with Matt and then Jack on the viability of some form of desalinization as part of the toolbox, if you would, of additional water supply for the district. Matt Sampson, Jack Gibson follows.
Great. I do think it's one of the viable options that's currently part of this plan. And I think we should actually start sharpening our pencil a little bit and start cutting through the weeds and actually eliminate a lot of the stuff that's not a viable option. But desal does remain that piece. But when we look to set goals, going back to a 4-year storage or a 4-year water supply, which is imperative just based on industry standard, but for our own sustainability, we need to know how much it's going to take to get there and how much we can get from other sources such as winter water where it's more economical, but understand the delta or what we need to make up to get to that 4-year supply. And that's where we identify the size of a desal plant or recycled water plant. They'll help fill that gap should we need it. But technology is racing fast on this. And I think right now, as we start planning for that, step one, allow for the voters to make a choice about the desal piece. And that's going to start with education early on and messaging immediately after the election in terms of what desal actually is and the impacts are. And then at that point, we'll take a look at the regional versus not regional and size of it and location of it in terms of where we want to be.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I firmly believe that desal water is in our future. I don't necessarily think it is going to be done by MMWD alone. I see desal as a partnership venture. And most likely, again, I would reach out to the Sonoma Water and North Marin Water and perhaps a desal plant along the Petaluma River that would be a joint partnership for it. But again, that's further in the future. I think more immediately, in conjunction with the long-term projects we're talking about, I think we need to do some local infrastructure changes that would be in a larger portfolio of water supply sources. For example, we've talked much about raising the spillways at some of our dams, most likely Sulahuli, that would be economically efficient. It would be the least environmental impact, and at the same, but conversely, it would generate the least amount of new water. So it'll be a portfolio of these things that I think get us water on the short term, and then Russian River winter water or a potential joint venture desal plant on the longer term. But we'll need to be working in both directions on the short term and the long term soon.
Thank you, Jack.
Yep.
Scott, any questions from our viewers?
Yeah, let me move on to a topic of infrastructure, and related to that, a topic of growth. We have obviously infrastructure of a certain age, and on top of that, there have been calls in other sectors, in the housing sector, for example, for increased housing availability, which means new construction, which means new water meters, which obviously impacts supply as well as infrastructure. So, and I guess this one goes first to you, Jack. How are you viewing the appropriate approaches to infrastructure maintenance and upgrades, and how do the calls for increased housing and new water meter certifications tie into that?
Well, the water district legally is not a planning agency, and we are not allowed to take any step at controlling growth or in being involved in growth by use of water hookups. And so the process is we supply to each of the local jurisdictions, county and the various towns, all of the information we have regularly in terms of water supply, and then we get from them where they want to go with housing development and now a very big part of our program within that context is encouraging low water use. For example, gray water systems, recycle where we can do it. All of which we try to link to new housing approval as it goes along, so that we get the maximum efficiency out of whatever new water hookups that we get. Yeah. Okay.
Check. Matt?
Yes, in terms of the growth piece, I think, again, this is a very similar theme going on. This growth and this housing piece didn't just happen overnight. And this should have been anticipated for, especially as a non-regulatory agency for growth, understanding what the customers are going to demand and starting to meet those needs. And that needs to go into the supply planning piece. Another thing that I think has not been done. And then what you end up doing is limiting stuff based on water supply, where we should be able to meet the demand of what's being impacted by the local jurisdictions that are making these decisions about growth. And that needs to be continually communicated and continually to be placed into the equation when we're dealing with our water supply. As far as the infrastructure piece, I think, it's no secret the infrastructure is aging, and many actually very critical projects have been deferred. And we're put in a place where now we're in a pretty tough spot where a bunch of different converging issues are coming together, and money is going to be the limiting reagent to try to get out of this. So it puts us in a very interesting position. But I do agree that as impacts come, we have the opportunity to make them less water use or water dependent through the use of recycled water and those other systems. But we also need to truly ask ourselves what the bang for the buck is before we just say something like that. Because when you start looking at the numbers of the folks taking advantage of a lot of those systems, it almost makes them non-existent in terms of water supply piece. And I think that's an area for improvement, and we can get more people into recycling, reusing, and using gray water as well. Thank you.
Matt, you'll go first this time, and it's a combined question. What are the prospects? What are the realistic prospects of having substantial additional water supplies if we pursue more vigorously recycled water, and also the view of purple pipe, basically water that we could not otherwise drink, but put in a new infrastructure to use it in other purposes? Purple pipe and recycled water. Matt, your thoughts, followed by Jack.
Yeah, I think both are going to play a critical portion of our future. I think we're going to be a generation that's looked back upon and actually been one of the last ones to be able to use potable, pristine, really good quality Marin municipal water to flush our toilets. And we'll be asked by generations why we did that. When you actually look at the use of water within a home, if you carve out washing dishes, taking a shower, cooking, you're looking at about 13% of the water use for the average home. That leaves a pretty big chunk and a pretty big area to look at recycled water and or purple pipe, specifically with the landscaping piece too, and the purple pipe portion of that. But the infrastructure is just not in place. And why it's not in place, I'm not sure. The district led for a long time in the recycled water arena. And then it seemed to have faltered off. I mean, it's been almost 10 years since the pipeline to the Peacock Gap Golf Course was first talked about. And I think there'd be a lot more willing folks if they knew that water was available close and we could actually get it that last 100 feet or the last 10 feet into a property once it's expanded out. But remaining just north of San Rafael really limits it. So it doesn't matter how much money or effort you're putting into the recycled plant right now. If it's not even be close to meeting the actual draw on it, it's just sitting there underutilized. So I think both are critical components to our future.
Jack?
I think that recycled water, the expansion of recycled water is definitely in our future. It is anticipated within the industry that by the end of next year, 2023, December is the actual focus date, the State Water Board will broaden the various uses of recycled water. So we are looking to that as an expansion. I think that recycled water will be more into water reuse. Certainly once those regulations lighten up and give us a more expanded use. But it is very much in the future. And as I said previously, we launched it for Northern California 20 years ago, 20 years ago plus, and have been a leader in the area ever since. That has expanded. I mentioned my connection with the North Bay Water Reuse Authority and how the regional effort on recycled water has expanded as well. So all of that is there, and I'm sure within the next year or so will be expanded greatly.
Thank you, Jack.
Yep.
Matt and Jack, thank you again for answering those questions. But now it's time for you, with Matt starting, since Jack started first, followed by Jack, to, in a minute and a half, tell our viewers and everybody watching out there in future when they download this video, why they should vote for you for District Director for the Marin Municipal Water District. Matt Sampson, 1.5 minutes on why you're the guy.
Great. And thank you very much again. And Jack, thank you for participating too. I'm running because I'm optimistic. I think we're at a spot right now where progress and change can be made. And I think we have the ability to prohibit what happened last year from happening again if we're proactive, not reactive, if we actually think out and plan and not just react to what's been handed to us, and really utilize the time we have, the good years now, and the learning lessons we're getting from other districts around the Western United States to take into best practices and making sure they go into effect now and not continually to kick the can down the road, which I feel like has been done for a long time. In 1991, I learned how to flush a toilet with a bucket of water as a kid. 30 years later, I was about to teach my daughters how to do it for the same reason. And I just don't understand why things haven't changed since then to the point where we no longer have to worry about that, because none of these things that have hit us or come across us are anything new. And now is the time to make a change, make progress, and get us out of the hole we were put in last year. And for that, I ask for your vote and appreciate your support. Thank you.
Matt Sampson, thank you. Jack Gibson, please.
Okay, and again, thank you, and thank you, Matt, for participating as well. What I bring to the table, I suggested it earlier in the conversation, is the regional experience, the contacts and relationships with those making decisions in the other throughout the entire region. It is clear to me that that's the future. That's where our new water will come from. It will come from a joint effort approach by several of the districts, all of the North Bay. And I quite frankly think I am in the best position to make that happen. I can guide it through and am committed to do that. So there is opportunity here, and I think we just have to take advantage of it and bring far more security to our water supply. And I see it happening now.
Jack Gibson, thank you. And Matt, thank you. Just a reminder to our viewers out there, if you all go to your mailbox tomorrow, or at the latest Wednesday, you're going to find your ballot. Every person in the state of California who's registered to vote will receive a ballot by mail. So this time, there's not much of an excuse not to participate in this, probably one of the most important elections, as Mimi said, certainly in the water field in decades, and certainly one of the biggest, I like to say, marquee items on the November ballot. Jack and Matt, thank you again. From the 1st District, we're going to move now to the 3rd Division, which consists of the Ross Valley, San Geronimo Valley, and Green Bay. The 3 candidates are Larry Bragman, the incumbent, Jack Kenny, and Rajiv Kush. Rajiv, Jack, and Larry, please come on the screen. And there you are. Welcome. And we invite you each, starting in alphabetical order, which is going to be Larry, followed by Jack, by Rajiv, and the end will be the inverse, to tell us in a minute and a half why you're running, what's your goal, what are you trying to accomplish, and who you are.
Hello, I'm Larry Bragman. I'm running for re-election for Marin Water District, Division 3, and I want to thank COST for holding this forum so voters can make an informed decision as to who to cast their ballot for. I focused my past 2 terms on the health and safety of residents and providing the best pure water at an affordable price. I led the effort to end the use of toxic pesticides in our watershed. The use of Roundup-type herbicides was a direct threat to our water supply and habitat, and they're now banned. Marin Water also instituted a robust fire safety protection program to protect the watershed, also on my watch. As to increasing water supply, I've proposed installation of operable gates on some of our dam spillways, which would add over 5,000 acre-feet of local storage. And I'm pleased that a number of my fellow candidates now agree with my proposal. In response to the drought, we have already rebuilt the Castania pump station to access another 5,000 acre-feet from Sonoma. We rebuilt a state-of-the-art recycled water facility, adding another 4,000 acre-feet. And last but not least, Marin reduced its use overall by 6,000 acre-feet in the last year. We are at a crossroads with climate change. 95% of California is experiencing severe drought, while local reservoirs in Marin are now at over 100% of seasonal average. We're in better shape than most, but we're continuing to do more to secure Marin's water future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. Jack Kenny.
Hi, I am Jack Kenny, 19-year resident of Ross, California, and current project director of Point Reyes Public Advocacy. I am running for Marin Municipal Water Board District 3 Director because I feel Marin Municipal Water Board has not put enough active effort in representing its constituents. In order to improve this, I hope to find affordable, representative ways to expand our water supply through a combination of recycling more water for outdoor irrigation, increasing dam capacities, and possibly tapping into the Russian River or desal at the mouth of the Petaluma River as a joint effort with other counties such as Sonoma and Northern Marin Water Board, as well as putting more efforts into getting assistive grants from the state and federal government to help pay for these expensive endeavors for our water supply, as well as consider restructuring the fees in ways that are more representative of water use rather than flat fees from water meters and other elements.
Thank you, Jack. Rajiv. And you are on mute.
Sorry about that. And hello, everyone. My thanks as well to COST for organizing, to Dick and Scott for moderating. So my background, I'm a water scientist with a PhD in biology. In 2005, I founded a research and consulting organization, the Aquia Institute, that is dedicated to water supply and sanitation planning in the developing world. Our staff are now based in 7 countries, and we have worked on water and sanitation planning in over 20 countries. My family has lived in San Anselmo for 14 years, and we know that there isn't a better place than Marin to call home. But my experience with water supply planning at global levels tells me that our local supplier, MMWD, is not planning well for climate change. And this is a serious concern for anyone who loves living in Marin. Now, through my work, I collaborate with water suppliers that are planning well for climate change and those that are not. And I will argue that there are 2 major requirements for good planning. One is the level of political will among leaders to make difficult and expensive decisions. Number 2 is the ability of leaders to build public support for difficult and expensive decisions. I know that I can bring both of these skills to make a difference at MMWD. And that is why I'm running for the Division 3 board seat. I will apply my global experience in water supply planning to diversify Marin's water supply beyond rainwater and ensure that we make progress towards a water supply target. For example, the industry standard of 4 years of available water supply. I will commit to the goal of never having to pick up the Marin IJ to read that Marin suppliers hope for luck in the rain cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv. first question, and the first question, since Larry started off there, Jack, you're going to be the first to answer the question, followed by Rajiv, and then Larry, and then we'll keep alternating. These are the similar questions that we asked to the first division candidates. Jack, how do you differ from the other candidates in your division in terms of experience, approach, and policy objectives?
In terms of experience, I have a deeper knowledge than either of my opponents in terms of what our constituents, the voters of whom we are trying to represent, are actually seeking. As I have visited 10,000 plus houses and asked, and thousands of them have answered the doors and told me what exactly it is they are concerned about in terms of cost and supply. I also plan on hosting weekly outdoor meetings for anyone in the district to talk to me in person and mention any of their concerns with the system in general or at their own house in order to be fully aware of what our constituents who we are supposed to support and represent are seeking. That is what I feel I have to offer over the other candidates.
Thank you, Jack. Rajiv?
Thanks, Dick. So as I noted in my introduction, I have worked on global water and sanitation planning for almost 20 years. I've built an organization that started in my garage and now payrolls employees in 7 countries. I collaborate regularly with government agencies and their development partners to hit water supply targets in over 20 countries. I've not only contributed to those water supply development projects, I've also learned from all of the water supply innovation that is occurring in those areas. I currently collaborate with academic water experts in universities across our state. So together, I will argue that I can bring a global perspective to ensure that Marin benefits from all of the learning and all of the innovation that's taking place in so many parts of our world.
Thank you, Rajiv. Larry?
Thank you. The definite difference is experience and participation. As far as experience is concerned, I've been involved in the public sphere for almost 20 years. And I have met many, many thousands of people and worked deliberatively and collaboratively with the community and gotten results. And as opposed to the other 2 candidates, I've actually attended and participated in Marin Water meetings, both of whom have not done so. So I've actually put myself out there and participated and helped deliver change locally. And I think my record actually speaks for the fact that I've brought change to Marin Water. We've gotten our meetings televised. We banned toxic herbicides. We've added to our water supply. And this was all done during the messy process of democracy that I firmly believe in. It's not a matter of political will and public engagement. It's a matter of deliberation and collaboration with the public through democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Scott, question?
Yes, so what we'd like to do is give the same opportunity and the same challenge to the Division 3 candidates as we just heard from the Division 1 candidates, as far as what, if anything, would you commit to bringing to a vote of the Water Board within the first 6 months as a proposal for change, something to improve our situation here in the county? And if you would make that commitment to bring something to the board within the first 6 months, what is that proposal likely to be?
Let's see, it's Rajiv, I think, starts this time.
Great. I think to answer that, I just want to I want to step back for a minute and ask, why are we always going through cycles of water shortage and water crisis? The reason is not very complicated. 100% of MMWD's potable drinking water supply comes from rainfall. In order to get out of this cycle of water crises, we need to diversify our water supply portfolio. Therefore, in the first 6 months, I commit to bringing to the board proposals that look at water supply options beyond rainfall. And there are really only 3. One is desalination. One of them is wastewater reuse for potable purposes. The second is importing water from the Central Valley and the State Water Project. Now, I'm not saying that we will do all 3, but we need to do at least one of those to diversify. Now, desalination is interesting because, as was noted earlier, the voters have actually put a measure on passed a measure that does not allow the district to move forward with desalination. In March of this year, the board was asked to put a measure on the ballot that asking voters to rescind that measure, Measure S. The board did not do so. And that was one of the motivations that got me to throw my head into the ring to address this topic.
Rajiv, thank you. Larry, and then Jack. And anybody need the question re-answered? The fundamental question.
What's the question?
Yeah, the fundamental question is, will you commit within the first 6 months, if you're elected or re-elected, to put on the MMWD board agenda an active proposal for additional water source? And if so, what might that be?
Well, as stated in my opening, we've already added additional water source when we rebuilt our recycled water plant at Las Colinas. And we've got a shovel-ready project to get Bay Delta water over the Richmond Bridge. So that leaves the desalination question, a very controversial question. And one of the candidates stated that he was inspired to join the race when the board didn't decide to put it on the ballot in March. He was not at that meeting. He did not participate in that meeting. And that's sort of typical of where this campaign is, of candidates using overheated rhetoric and empty promises. You know, water is a complicated topic, and it involves many different moving parts. It involves many different agencies, and it involves very complex financial piece. So I would say, yes, we will move forward with another water source. I would say I'm very interested in Marin committing to doing a test well up at the Petaluma Aquifer to see if we can draw some of that brackish water and use it in our system and share it with our sister agencies.
Thanks, Larry. Jack?
Can you ask the question again?
Sure. The the viewer asked, will you commit to putting on, if elected, to putting on the agenda at the board, water board, one of the new sources of water to be voted on? And if so, what would be your inclination what that source would be? So 6 months, would you commit to putting something on the agenda in 6 months, then vote on it up or down, and what would it be?
Yes, I would be committed to putting on something on the agenda to expand upon our current efforts to recycle water and put more golf courses on gray water systems, such as the Meadow Club, so that we can better preserve our fresh water for its essential uses, such as indoor water, and expand our water supply in general.
Thank you very much. Both of them, and it's been mentioned by multiple candidates, the word that a lot of people have talked about, desalination. Should desal be considered a practical alternative for additional water sources by the MMWD, or is it simply impractical or has too many negative impacts? Let's start off with Larry, because you'd be next in order.
I think desal could be a possible alternative. I'm very interested in the brackish water aquifer up in Petaluma, which has much fewer environmental impacts than conventional desal as espoused by the other two candidates. It's got less of an impact on the bay, it's got less energy intensive use, and it's less expensive. It's about half the price of a conventional desal plant. And I would commit to asking our agency to do a test well up in Petaluma. That would be our first step, because we could share the expense of that facility with our sister agency. We would all benefit from it with lower environmental impacts. And I do think technology is changing at a rapid pace, so it's hard to predict the efficacy of desal, but I would say at this point, knowing what we know, I think that would be the place to start.
Larry, thanks. Jack, your thoughts on desalinization? And please unmute. Yeah, there you go.
I consider desalinization something to consider, most notably up at the mouth of the Petaluma River, like Larry mentioned, as that water would have the least environmental impact of all desalinization options. However, I've noticed a lot of constituents are very concerned about their cost, and there is a very mixed review about the desalinization, and therefore I don't consider it as good of a first option as recycling or raising spillways of dams for our water supply. Nonetheless, it is definitely something to keep on the table as a consideration, especially if we can do it in conjunction with other water districts such as Northern Marin Water and Sonoma County Water.
Rashid, your thoughts on desalinization?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think diversifying so that we're not 100% reliant on rainwater is critical going forward. Desalinization has a lot of issues and related to it that I don't think we should ignore: the energy use, the environmental concerns. However, since the time that MMWD last explored desal seriously, there's been a lot of technical innovation in all of these areas because the demand for desal is expanding quickly at global levels, also here in the state. So we currently have about 12 existing seawater desalinization facilities, not all for water supply, but most are. And we have at least 2 brackish water desalinization plants in the Bay Area. One in Antioch, one that's been operating in Newark since 2003. So those examples suggest that desalinization is becoming a more viable option. The state is also putting more, is also focusing more attention on desalinization. So together, I would argue, yes, that it merits reevaluation as an option for Marin, for MMWD. I think they're, doing this as a collaborative initiative with different water agencies in the Bay Area has a lot of promise. It may also mean we would also have to look at the costs of bringing water from treated water from another location into Marin, but that type of analysis has to be done.
Thanks, Rajiv. Scott, another question from the viewers?
Yes. So once again, let's get the candidates' views on this issue of aging infrastructure, the existence of an old system that obviously needs maintenance and perhaps upgrading. And then once again, in light of the housing calls for increased housing, what view, if any, do you have about calls for increasing the number of new water meters, which would be an outgrowth of new housing units?
Rajiv, then Larry, and then Jack.
Yes. Managing infrastructure is always a challenge for water suppliers, particularly as revenues fall. Now, the attention that MMWD has placed on conservation and the corresponding response from ratepayers to conserve, as we have all done very well for obvious reasons, has resulted in decreased revenues for the district. Any water supplier that enforced that promotes conservation has to do parallel efforts to either reduce costs or increase revenues in parallel. MMWD has not done that. So conservation has resulted in lower revenues, a more challenging financial situation for the district, and one of the first areas that, one of the first issues that emerges when water suppliers start to face financial challenges is deferred maintenance. MMWD is currently faced with a lot of deferred maintenance. I think we see that now with pipe ruptures increasing. So it's something that we're going to have to get on top of, and that is going to be expensive. The housing issue, a water supplier should be solely focused on planning for required water supplies. If growth is being planned, then the water supplier must include that in their plans. A water supplier, it's very dangerous for a water supplier to become involved with the activities of regulating growth.
Ron Jeeves, thank you. Larry.
Could you repeat the question?
Scott.
Sure. So we're asking about your approach to handling aging infrastructure, and if you have any views about calls for new housing units, which would mean more water meter and increased demand.
Okay. So first of all, as to financing our infrastructure, I'm surprised Ranjiv is not familiar with the fact that Marin Water changed its billing system about 3 years ago. It's now a blended billing system. We have fixed fees to create a dedicated fund for infrastructure and a dedicated fund for watershed. And it's surprising that Ranjiv is not familiar with it. He's been endorsed by COST, which is presently actively suing the water district over its rate structure. So A, we have changed our rate structure to cover our fixed costs and pay for infrastructure and watershed. B, there's no evidence that there's an increasing number of ruptures in our water lines as stated by Ranjiv. That's just not the case. We have a regular maintenance system. We have 900 miles of pipeline, and we are vigilant as possible. It's over $1 million a mile to replace a transmission pipe. It is a very expensive responsibility and one we take very seriously. We have an advanced leak detection system. We also have an electrolysis system to prevent corrosion in our pipes. B, housing. Right now, I see the opportunity to put the housing where the water is. And where the water is in northern San Rafael. I don't know what the city of San Rafael is going to do with Northgate. I understand they're taking a look at redeveloping Northgate into a mixed use type of development with a lot of residential. That has the capability, the possibility to become an eco-village where all your non-potable uses would be supplied by our purple pipe system. You have unobstructed solar up there. So I think much like ABAG wants us to move the housing where transportation is, right now we have to move the housing where the water is. And at the moment, that's probably in North San Rafael, where there are already plans afoot to create more residential units. Last thing, newer units, multifamily units are much more efficient than single family homes. So there's not a linear relationship between housing units and water use. I think as we go into the future, you'll see that water use will actually continue to decrease on an individual unit basis. And I think we're going to meet the challenge. Last point, the governor just signed a bill a few days ago, giving counties some flexibility to account for climate change, including water and wildfire. So I think we do have some discretion to modify our housing, our RENA numbers.
Great, Jack.
Marin Municipal Water Board, I feel, will need to put great efforts into getting state and federal government funding to help pay for pipe fixes, as well as pay for additional water supply to compensate for the additional housing, preferably, as Larry said, also putting the additional housing in areas near the Purple Pipe District. And getting state and federal funding is most notably important as there are a lot of ratepayers throughout District 3 who are very concerned about the fees, both in terms of construction projects as well as just their general rates. So that is why I am saying we need to be very serious about trying to get as much funding as we can from the state and federal government to pay for these projects to minimize the fees placed upon our constituents.
Jack, thank you very much. This question, Jack, you will go first. And it relates to two potential sources of water that have been much discussed, but my question is, are they practical? And that is recycling water and gray water, purple pipe. Is it, sounds good, but are they practical in bringing substantial amounts of new water to the users and consumers of the MMWD?
Yes, expanding upon our recycled water efforts, especially if we can manage to get state and federal funding to help pay for these expensive endeavors. While difficult, I still consider an effective and ideal measure to take for outdoor water use near sanitation plants and to golf courses whom are willing to pay for the pipe. As one Meadow Club member mentioned to me, the Meadow Club, for example, was interested in building a pipe from the Central Marin Sanitation Plant to the Meadow Club so that the course is run on gray water rather than fresh water as it's currently using.
Thanks, Jack. Ranjiv.
Yeah, Larry Cost is actually supporting 3 of the candidates this year, and I actually am pretty familiar with some of the issues around lawsuits. I don't support lawsuits against our water supplier, and maybe that trend was started when you sued the district to block them from working on desalinization in 2009. Some people have asked whether that raises conflicts of interest in your current participation in decisions around desalinization at MMWD, but maybe that's something we can discuss later. When it comes to water reuse, 30 cities in California now are going to add over 500,000 acre-feet annually of wastewater to drinking water projects in the next 5 years, including Central Coast communities, San Diego, Silicon Valley. As has been noted, the state is putting together a regulatory framework that will allow us to purify wastewater for direct potable reuse. If we take that route, that will be sufficient to provide 25% of our water needs. So I think that's a remarkable opportunity. The wastewater for irrigation purposes for non-potable uses will require extensive retrofitting of purple pipes across our across the service area. I think focusing on direct potable reuse is going to provide the most practical strategy going forward.
Ranjiv, thank you. Larry Bragman, recycled, gray pipe, purple pipe. Your thoughts? Are they going to be a viable thing a viable method to produce substantial amounts of new water? That's the fundamental question.
I would say I'm not sure if Marin County residents want to pay quintuple the price to drink recycled water. I think most residents would rather drink natural water that we get from our watershed and would rather conserve. So I kind of disagree with candidate Sampson, who complained about having to put a bucket next to his toilet. I personally would rather flush the toilet with shower water than drink out of the toilet for 5 times the cost. Regulations may change. It still remains the fact that at the end of the day, recycled water is going to cost 5 times as much as what we're currently paying. As far as gray water is concerned, It was at my request that gray water is now required for new developments and extensive remodeling. It has not been taken up enthusiastically by our community, and I think it's going to require creating a core of gray water technicians that are familiar with it and kind of rethinking how we look at our water and how we look at our landscape. What else do I want to cover? Purple pipe. I would like to see it extended. Again, it's very expensive. It's at least $1 million a mile to put in recycled pipe. There's a lot of complications there. But yeah, of course, we should not be using fresh potable water to water our golf courses. I would like to just correct Jack. The Meadow Club actually uses raw water. They don't use treated water. They have a kind of a special connection with Marin Water. So it doesn't go through our treatment plant, but they are interested in connecting to our recycled water facilities. And it's a very interesting proposal. Same with Peacock Gap. But again, what the other candidates aren't really talking about is finance. Our water district is committed to providing affordable water to our residents, affordable and healthy water. And I'm dedicated to that proposition because water is a human right and it's got to be affordable by all of our residents, 70% of whom never get out of tier 1, 70% of whom believe in conservation. And I'd like to inspire the rest of our residents to conserve, to make beautiful landscapes with low water landscapes. We have a lot to do in Marin and we can do it.
Well, first of all three of you, you've been very succinct in your answers, which means we have a little extra time to take some more questions, different questions from some of the viewers out there. And so Scott Pinsky is going to give you a couple of them, but we're going to start when we answer this time. Larry, you're going to go first with whatever question Scott has.
Thanks, Dick. So we have some questions about the budget and your experience specifically in the area of budget. One viewer wants to know what qualifies you and what experience you have to qualify you to direct such a large and critical agency, and specifically with respect to the rates that ratepayers, the customers of MMWD are paying. What, if anything, can you think of that you would attempt to do or that you would propose to try to get the costs down for the ratepayers?
Larry Bragman, followed by Ranjiv, and followed by Jack Kennedy, followed by Ranjiv.
Okay, so as far as experience is concerned, been in private practice 40 years, so I've managed to keep the lights on and save a little money. As far as background and training, my dad, I worked in a corporation with my dad for about 10 years on a board of directors of a private company. My father was a very, very amazing numbers person, could read, spreadsheets, amazing acuity. But beyond that, I've been a public official for 20 years. I've done 20 budgets for public agencies. I've gone out to the people to raise taxes when they were needed. I haven't been afraid to do that. As I mentioned before, it was under when I was president, we changed our rate structure because we recognized that depending on the sale of water in climate change just doesn't make sense. We are really a service agency. The water is not a commodity, it's a resource. We are really a resource management company or organization providing a service. And in order to do that, we boldly took the unpopular step of adding fixed fees to cover infrastructure and a fixed fee to cover the watershed, which no matter how much water is used, we need to cover those two primary pieces of our system, of this historic system that we are committed to continuing.
Jack Kenny.
Could you ask the question again?
Scott?
Sure. So the question is generally, what is your experience in budgetary management to prepare you for managing a large and important agency such as this? And what ideas, if any, would you have for helping to bring down the cost of water to the ratepayers?
Currently, I have looked at many ratepayers' bills as of going to their houses, and many ratepayers have shown me their bills. And it appears that the current rate structure is not reflective enough upon how much water people use, as many MMWD customers have majority of their bill isn't even based upon water. And therefore, if we want to represent those tier 1 users, we should restructure the fees so that it is more based on water use and less based on meters and other costs, by making water more expensive and subsidizing everything else in the bill to make it so as much of the bill is based on water use as possible, increasing the cost upon water abusers who use large amounts of water, and minimizing the cost for people who conserve, also further motivating conservation.
Thank you, Ranjiv Kush.
You're muted, Rajiv.
My background in finance begins with the development of an organization that, as I've noted earlier, now operates in multiple countries. I've built that up from scratch. I've sat on the board of our Marin Sonoma Vector Control District for the last 6 years. I serve on both the Budget Committee and the Finance Committee. I'm also the board secretary. So that's given me multiple years of developing budgets for another public agency. Now, when we look at the management of MMWD finances, Larry has talked a lot about the importance of keeping water affordable. What he has forgotten to mention is that when we run out of water, the requirements for addressing that are very expensive. So let's look at the example from about a year ago. About a year ago, the board was committing to spend $100 million on a pipeline to get Marin out of its water crisis. Now, in order to take out a bond of that level and maintain the district's current AA bond rating, I think the estimates were going to be rate increases somewhere in the range of 7 to 10%. So I'm not sure that at that time affordability was the biggest priority, and obviously that was due to poor planning. Unfortunately, I don't think the levels of planning that are required to ensure that MMWD achieves climate resilience are going to result in lower rates. They are going to result in higher rates as we have to borrow the money to achieve those infrastructure developments.
Ranjiv, thank you very much. Once again, thank you, by the way, for all of you three for answering efficiently, if I might. And you'll have an opportunity now to perhaps take advantage of that with 1.5 minutes each. Since Larry started and Ranjiv went last, we'll reverse the ending to Ranjiv, Jacques, and Larry, who are going to tell us in 1.5 minutes why the good voters out there should cast their one ballot for the Water District Board for you.
Thanks, Dick. So I'd like us to step back to 1912, when the leaders of Marin had a vision for a thriving and prosperous county. This vision included establishing MMWD with voter approval as the first municipal water supplier in the state of California. Local citizens paid for the consolidation of 24 private water suppliers that became MMWD. They also paid for the creation of the Mount Tam watershed. Following that, they invested in massive infrastructure projects. Alpine Dam, at the time, one of the largest dams in California, was built between 1917 and 1918. That was followed by further reservoir development treatment plants, levels of investment that were truly remarkable given the size of the population at that time. Somewhere along the way, we lost that spirit of investing in our water infrastructure. MMWD hasn't made a major infrastructure investment since they raised the Kent Lake Dam in 1982. Now, I will argue that it's time to rebuild a vision for MMWD. With the right leadership, we can reestablish a vision for MMWD that will create a sustainable water supplier for the next 100 years. With the right leadership, we can make MMWD a model for local water resilience and innovation. So I will ask all of you to come together to build that vision. As I said in the beginning, let's set a goal of never having to pick up the Marin IJ and reading that Marin suppliers hope for luck. Thank you.
Ranjiv Kush, thank you. Jack Kenny, please. Why should the voters vote for Jack Kenny?
I, Jack Kenny, am running for Marin Municipal Water Board Director with a goal to start truly representing and engaging the voters and pushing through the plans that the voters want and making the cost of expanding our water supply as minimal as possible upon the voters and get as much money as possible from the state and federal government to help pay for our water supply to improve by the means, whether it be recycling or increased dam capacity. And that is the most notable reason I encourage you to vote for me as Water Board Director.
Jack, thank you very much. Larry Bragman, if you would unmute first, and then tell us why the voters should cast their one ballot for Larry Bragman.
Okay. We're not relying on luck. As I said in my opening statement, we did invest in a state-of-the-art recycled water facility at Las Colinas. We did rebuild our pumps in Sonoma. We have increased our water supply. We have increased our conservation. And I would suggest we already are a model of resilience and innovation. I've never been a flashy representative seeking headlines, but I've delivered. If you reelect me, you'll continue to have a fiscally responsible and knowledgeable and steady hand providing pure, healthy, affordable water at the helm. I've lived and worked in Marin for over 40 years, and the trust that Marin residents have given to me to protect the Mount Tam watershed is an honor that I'm grateful for and a responsibility that I take seriously. And I'm also responsive to the needs of individual district residents who need assistance. Because of this record, I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club, the Marin Democratic Party, the North Bay Labor Council, Marin Professional Firefighters, SEIU, San Geronimo Planning Group, Congressman Jared Huffman, Senator Mike McGuire, Assemblyman Mark Levine, a long list of mayors, council members, special district representatives, and community leaders have all put their confidence and trust in me because they've seen what I've done, not what I've said. They've seen what I've delivered, not what I've promised. So I just ask all of you watching this, our work is not done. We are at a crossroads. And I need your vote to continue doing the work we need to do to secure Marin's water future. And thank you very much again for this opportunity to talk to the public.
Thank you, Larry Bragman. And just to remind the viewers out there, this is the third division, and that's the Ross Valley, down to parts of Green Bay and over to the San Geronimo Valley. So if you're in that district, you have three good choices to pick from for your one vote for the Marin Municipal District Board. We're now going to shift to the fourth division, which is basically Mill Valley, Tamalpais Valley, Marin City, and Strawberry in southern Marin. the one candidate who is kind enough to come with us today and share his views is Jed Smith. And so, Jed, welcome to the Cost Forum on Water. You have a minute and a half to start with. I don't have to worry about who's first and who's second. You're first and second.
Yes.
A minute and a half to tell us a bit about yourself, what your goals are if you're elected to the Water Board from your third or from your fourth division seat, Southern Marin.
Great. Thank you, Mimi, Scott, Dick Spotswood, and the COST group for coordinating this forum. I'm Jed Smith. I'm an 18-year resident of Mill Valley. I have 3 kids who've been through the public schools from kindergarten through Tam High. I'm grateful for these forums, which enable us to engage with the community and elevate the conversation with a robust discourse and dialogue. In the end, we are seeking to be representatives of our community, and as forums like this that are the fulcrum of engagement. Although my opponent is not here today, she will be on the ballot, and thus I'm taking this campaign very seriously. Water is a core right of our civilization, and providing it to our population in an affordable manner is paramount. When I was tapped on the shoulder to look at the MMWD role, I took a step back. I went on a 7-month listening tour. I didn't just jump in and toss my hat in the ring, but I listened to leaders in our community, to water experts, and what I realized is that there are needs do fit my skill set. Fiscal prudence, organizational decision-making, staff satisfaction, complex regional partnership negotiations, healthy environmental stewardship are all areas that are a perfect fit for what I have done over a long period of time. I'm thrilled to have the endorsement of and support of a lot of our leaders, and I look forward to the opportunity to be here with you today.
Jed, the question which we've asked everyone to start off with is, how do you differ from the other candidate in the race, either by experience, approach, or policy?
Well, it is a little bit unfair that that there is no response here, but I guess I will talk about some of my skills that are different, not just from her, but other candidates in running for this position. I bring significant board experience, management experience, leadership, running teams of up to 2,000 people, organizations the size of this organization and smaller. I have run financial budgets. I have led organizations from a chairing of the board to CEO to staff member and entrepreneur. MMWD's 200 plus employees, I hope to bring them focus and appreciation, listening, fiscal responsibility, so that we can look at the difficult decisions that are ahead of us and come together as one group with one voice looking forward.
Scott, question?
Thank you, and welcome, Jed.
Thank you.
You've already heard our preceding speakers describe what they would commit to do within the first 6 months of their term, if elected or re-elected. So let's round it out and give you an opportunity to tell us, would you commit to a project proposal being brought to the board by you within the first 6 months? And if so, what would that project be?
Great. The short story is that one project would be recycling, but I do think we need to take a step back. What I have not seen and what I hope to bring forward is a short, medium, and long-term water resiliency plan. In the short term, one that looks at an emergency insurance situation so we don't get caught like we did last fall. In the medium term, I hope to bring, and the short term, my target, my challenge to the organization is to come up with 2,000 acre feet of additional water, either storage, supply, and or conservation to achieve that. In the medium term, I hope that we can challenge ourselves to find 10,000 acre feet. And in that medium term, it's going to take some investment in recycling, other ways so that we can diversify our portfolio so that we're not just reliant on rain. And so there are 30 sites that have been identified. The Central Marin Sanitary District has looked at both providing 1,000 or 2,000 acre feet. I will put forward recycling in the first 6 months.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's talk about desal, if we might. Jed, your thoughts. It's on the lips of many people, and is it a possibility? Is it a realistic possibility? It's a possibility, but is it realistic?
Well, it's definitely the biggest touch point issue in water today. I have supporters that feel like it is the only answer and are extremely strong about that. And I have some that said, never, it will never happen. I will never let it happen. So this is a tough one. When I'm looking at the Jacob study, however, I am a bit disappointed. It does not lead towards desalination in the way that they've analyzed it to be something that's viable. The way it's been presented is it's a massive upfront investment of over $300 million, ongoing costs, tremendous energy use, which makes climate change worse. There's a brine issue with the residue. Overall, I find what they have proposed to be difficult to see in the short term. However, I do think in the long term, desal is inevitable. Technology will catch up. I've spent decades looking at new organizations, entrepreneurial organizations, innovation, and I am confident that desal technology will rise forward. In fact, Janelle Kelman, the great mayor of Sausalito, showed me a really interesting plan in the last 2 days, and I'm confident that new ideas will emerge.
Scott, you have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to actually follow up. I mean, since we do have some time, Jed, and you're kind of a solo act here for this segment. Talking about desal, it's been mentioned earlier today that there are numerous other examples of those systems already having been implemented in the Bay Area. Is there anything that you've learned from what you've read or seen or heard about these other installations that you could share with us as lessons that might either make it more cost effective, make it more environmentally palatable, or just allay some of the concerns some of these people have who are opposing the idea?
Yeah, well, I think as has been mentioned, just relying on rain in the face of drought is something that is not viable for us, that we need to find other ways to be independent, and we need other ways to to satisfy our community's needs. I'm impressed with the Antioch effort. I think it's a great solution for them, for that region, and it's not like we can tap into it. I'm interested in what has been shown for how we can use the Petaluma River and water coming down from Sonoma, but I still have not seen the best proposal for how that would not be harmful for the environment. I'm getting extremely conflicting reports, and so I do not have an answer. The one technology I did see that came through in the last few days that is intriguing is to have it be a deeper water, almost like a floating effort for desalination. Now, it would be smaller than our needs, but I do think that there are new interesting ideas that are going to come out.
Do you want me to go forward with another one, Dick, or do you have
yes,
something?
please.
Okay, thank you. So just to, again, round out your perspective on some of the other questions that we've heard from the other speakers today. We've heard about the issue of aging infrastructure. How would you address that? How would you view calls for additional water meters to satisfy the need for further housing construction? And an audience member has a tweak to that I want to kind of throw in too, if you have time to put this in your response. Do you have any thoughts on assisting homeowners in setting up their systems for collection of rainfall at their homes?
Great. I'll go in order in how you asked. On the infrastructure front, I actually am quite proud that the MMWD has invested over $25 million a year, I believe is the right number, in maintaining and replacing our infrastructure. In fact, in East Blythedale, they've just replaced a pipe that I think is up to 100 years old. There was another one recently in Mill Valley that was built in 1890. So MMWD, I do believe, has put a lot of effort into infrastructure investment, but it is clear, and we're not alone, that we have hundreds of millions of dollars of work that needs to get done, and that needs a long-term financial budget and plan. And I hope to be a part of that budgeting process. In regards to housing, I think my understanding is that the housing will be approximately 10% new housing that's being proposed for our cities to take on. And a lot of that housing, I do believe, would be somewhat less water intensive than the existing, and in how densely they will be built. And so if we're talking about a 5 to 10 increase in water supply to handle the housing proposals that are out there, I think that pales in comparison to our needs to create another year or two of water supply, as I believe almost every candidate here has agreed to.
Jed, thank you. Since you went first at the beginning of the 4th district, you will go first to come up with a minute-and-a-half reason why the voters out there here in Mill Valley, Tam Valley, Midland City, and Sausalito should cast their one ballot for you for Water District Director.
Got it. Thank you. So this is my closing. Is that right?
Indeed.
This is it. Okay, great. Well, thanks again, Dick and Cost, for doing this forum. And I do want to thank all of the candidates who are running. It has been an energetic process over the last months, getting to know you and learning. And I'm really encouraged that you folks want to do this and represent, as well as Shauna, who is running. So I also want to thank Larry and Jack and the existing board members for their hard work, because it is a service, it's a community service, it's public service. I've watched with the vitriol and the ire that's pointed at a lot of different people in this organization over time in our community. And I took a step back and I tried to understand, where is this angst coming from, this fear and uncertainty that seems to be from drought more than anything else, more than any one individual who may be blamed for something. What we're seeing in the Colorado River and in Southern California, that anxiety that has led to this pointing of fingers and singling out individuals, I would like to see turn towards the positive. I would hope that we can be proud of Marin Municipal Water. I think we should be now, and I think we can be even more proud in the coming years. I seek to bring my skills as a unifier, a political advocate, someone who can take action, leading large groups of people by listening. I seek to help or guide our community to step up and to take responsibility for our actions and develop a new plan together. How we use water, a new strategy for how we waste it, how we shouldn't waste it, how we can supply it, how we store it, and frankly, a strategy for how we're going to pay for it. With this new model in place, I hope that in this short period of time, we will look at a planning process that will guide us for generations. I hope in the coming years that we will be able to turn the tide and take back what at MMWD should be viewed as with pride. That is why I'm running for this position in this community. I seek your support. I appreciate you listening. I'm super grateful and thankful for the mentors who've guided me in the recent weeks and months. Dennis Fisco, Urban Carmel, Stephen Burke, Janelle Kelman, and many, many more. I'm thankful, I'm grateful, and I hope to be a good steward for our community.
Jed Smith, thank you. Election is only almost 28 days, 29 days. Well, actually, election starts tomorrow when the votes go out. So folks, don't forget, open your mailbox tomorrow or Wednesday, and you'll probably find your ballot. A pleasure to be here. Thank you for Cost. It's always a pleasure to work with Marin Coalition Scott Pinsky, and especially to turn it over to Mimi Willard.
Thank you. Well, I just would like to thank the candidates so much for showing up. I want to thank Dick and Scott for excellent moderation. You should be aware that the video will be up, we hope, within less than 24 hours. I would note that we had just so many people show up today that some of you did not get the questions answered that you entered through the Q&A queue, which is very disappointing to us, but we could only do what we could do. I would encourage you, if you have additional questions, to reach out to the candidates through their individual websites and ask questions that you still seek answers to. Finally, I would encourage you again, if you thought that this was useful, to go to our website, costmarin.org, and contribute to help cover our expenses so that we can keep doing events like this in the future. Thank you for attending. Bye now.